question many people have is whether leaders are born or made. And while current research does show that some of us are predisposed to become leaders, our brains actually operate slightly differently, there are also clear studies that show that you can learn leadership skills and become a more effective leader. And we're talking about leadership not just in the workplace, but in your community or in your family. I mean, when you become a parent, you have to step up to leadership, don't you? However, in the workplace, the leadership gap has been identified as one of the most important problem areas, shall we say, to address. That we need to cultivate leadership skills so that we do make sure that companies provide effective leadership for their employees. So that's why I developed the Leadership Hack. Now, the H in the Leadership Hack stands for hearing. And that doesn't mean go get your hearing checked in case you need a hearing aid. It means that we actively need to start listening to people. Frankly, we're born with brains that are hardwired to assess information as it comes in to see if there's a threat and prepare our reaction. So that means that we actually retain 25 to 50% of what we hear, believe it or not. You can improve upon that, or at least maximize it up to 50%, if you become an active listener and override the way your brain is hardwired to react. So I like to employ a method I call the therapist, which means simply repeating what the other person says. You know that technique when you go to meet somebody and shake their hand, you say their name out loud? It's the same thing by repeating what someone else says. You help make that information stick. But you do something else as well. You make sure that the two of you are on the same page, which is very important. And secondly, the person who is being heard actually responds positively. They have done studies about this too, put people in an MRI and measured the activity in the reward center of the brain when someone really feels that they are being heard. So hearing is a really important part of the leadership hack. The A in the hack stands for action. It means to be decisive. Now, sometimes people hesitate because they really want to get all the information and all the feedback, and they think that is part of that listening. But you listen, you get all the information, and then you have to take the next step, and that step is action. I often think about when I was down on the South Island here in New Zealand, and I saw a bunch of penguins come onto shore. They had spent all day out in the ocean, fishing, swimming, exhausted. And yet when they got to shore, they did a little bit of grooming, and then they kind of stood there waiting. Who was going to take the first step? We literally sat there for a good 45 minutes before one of those little penguins took a step forward, and then the others followed. Frankly, people aren't that different. We look to our leaders to take that first step and not to hesitate. There's another way to look at this too, and it's spelled out in a book, Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader by Herminia Ibarra. She talks about how important it is to take that first step, to take that decisive action in order to sort of develop the leadership skills and qualities required by a role or position. That we can't always think everything through and then take that step and expect it to work. That actually the process of taking the step, being bold and being decisive, gels the leadership qualities within us and makes us more effective leaders. It's almost as if you have to do it to learn it. The C in the hack stands for communicate, because through every step of the leadership process, it is important to keep that flow of information going. When you are listening, information is coming to you, and you are communicating back that you hear it. When you act, it is really important to make it clear, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. Simon Sinek has a concept called the Golden Circle. He did a wonderful TED Talk about this. And it talks about the big why and how leaders, really significant leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. or the Wright brothers, got people to follow their vision and follow their dream and act on their dream because they clearly communicated the big why behind it. We all like to be told why. Think about when you're a child and you're being chastised or told, no, you can't. Most of us would have been satisfied if our parents had just said, this is why. When I worked in the news, several times I was asked to interview people in positions of power to get them to explain an action or a decision. And the response could be, very many times, no comment. Now, from my perspective, and certainly from the viewer's perspective, Having no comment almost raised red flags. What's this person trying to hide? And very often, they're not trying to hide anything. Very often, they're trying to be perfect, and they don't want to be discovered if they're not. But how many times have you seen someone in the public eye be imperfect and then be open about it and say, I messed up, learned from it, moving on? Now the K in the leadership hack stands for kidding around. And no, I'm not kidding. Because humor, or a sense of humor, is a really critical ingredient to being an effective leader. All you have to do is think of times of stress. For example, the way humor plays a role in the military. Leaders there have to be decisive and have to motivate troops to do things that put their lives on the line. But at the same time, they can break the tension. Showing a sense of humor shows not only that you are human and more approachable, but that you have the ability to put things in perspective and consider how other people are feeling. These are all really critical skills, as well as being a sign of intelligence. Now, who would you rather follow as a leader? Someone who was buttoned up, never showing a chink in the armor, never admitting when they were wrong, keeping their mouth shut, and no sense of humor? Or would you like to follow someone who clearly listens to you, who acts decisively, communicates every step of the way, and admits when they've made a misstep, and then has the backbone to kid around, to take the tension out of situations? I think the answer is clear. These are the leadership skills that we can all cultivate, that we all have the power within us to learn. And you can use them not just in the workplace, but in any position in which you hold some power to be better, more effective, and frankly, better liked. So, happy hacking!